back into the Sausage Bowl podcast, coming at you with our first episode for the new season, season 2 of the Sausage Bowl podcast, but season 7 of the Sausage Bowl Fantasy League. So I know we did a couple off-season episodes, but those are just kind of, out there to have fun or whatever. Now is the official start of season 2 of the Sausage Bowl podcast, and we are very excited. Stop coming in before I introduce you, okay? But all right, as always, it's me, Danny, and my co-host Cosmo.
Hello, everybody. I'm ready for the second season, although usually the sequels are 10 times worse than the original, so we probably have nowhere to go but down this season. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I'm excited.
Our ratings are probably going to go down this year, but we
From
appreciate you
10,
guys sticking with us and staying, being excited. I know you guys have been like, oh, when's the podcast starting back up, all that stuff. So we enjoy it, and we enjoy making this for you. I'll admit we're not as prepared for this episode as we probably should be. We just had a lot of stuff going on the last few days, but we'll get right into it. But we promise we want to bring you guys bigger and better stuff this season. So I know we're letting you down right now, but don't worry about it. It'll happen in the future.
I don't care about these people at all. They get what we put out there.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah, just take it, accept it.
Yeah.
But all right, well, let's get right into this because we want to get moving. We're actually going to do something special for you guys. We're going to make a 2-part episode. We're going to go deeper into the draft this year, show our comments, all that stuff. It was just way more competitive this year. Everyone was more into it. Everyone was doing their research, everything. So we want to do our due diligence and look a little bit deeper into the draft. So we're going to do part of it this week, and we're going to do part of it next week. So we're going to get right into it. So here we go with the news with Anchorman Cosmo.
They used to call him Lamar the Reliable, but reliable he is no longer. Lamar Miller has, as we all saw before the draft, literally a couple hours before the draft, Lamar Miller has torn his ACL and will be out for the season. And now there's a lot of speculation as to what is going to happen in this Houston Texans backfield because, even though Lamar Miller hasn't been the best fantasy option over the last couple of years, he has definitely been 10-team relevant, and there's definitely a role there for someone to step in. Danny, how do you see this running back situation shaking out in Houston now that Lamar Miller is gone?
Well, first of all, I want to say, watch out for Cameron. Don't get on this guy's bad side because Lamar Miller was on Cameron's team last year, and Cameron kept putting him on his bench, and Lamar Miller kept popping off. And then as soon as Cameron put him on his starting lineup, he wouldn't do anything. So, Cameron was getting frustrated. I think maybe this is just me, not trying to, call anybody out here, but I think Cameron might have paid that Dallas defender to tackle him kind of weird and target his knee. I'm just, I'm not trying to call anyone out here. Just saying, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Didn't he have like 3 tight ends go down like back to back last year too?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, he might either be cursed or he's like targeting his own players. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why he's doing that, but he's targeting his own players. Or he might be cursed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you.
All right. Anyway, with that out of the way, obviously it's a good sign for Duke Johnson. He's been chilling on like 3rd string of the Browns for the last like 3 years or whatever. But now he's got his shot, so if he really believes in himself, he can prove it here. Obviously, they're going to bring someone in. They can't just go with Duke Johnson, who's never been a number 1 workhorse, carry the load running back, and they're 2 rookie. They're so irrelevant. I don't even know if they're rookies or sophomores or whatever. But all I know is that Bill O'Brien does not like the backup running backs. So. And I highly doubt they'll just leave it to Duke Johnson. So they might bring in like LaShawn McCoy, Jay Ajayi. There was someone else whose name was floating around a little bit, but I bet they bring someone in. Also, there's been talks of a Texans-Miami Dolphins trade with Jadeveon Clowney. So maybe Kenyon Drake gets brought in. Maybe Kalen Ballage gets brought in. I don't know. But there's been talks of a trade between them for Jadeveon Clowney. Who knows? But I highly doubt that Duke Johnson just remains the guy and no one else is brought in. But I do think it definitely increases his potential, which is why I snagged him up in the draft. But we'll get to that later. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think they are going to bring someone in. Part of the reason I took a shot on Jay Ajayi, even though he's technically not on the team. But yeah, I don't think they're going to really rely on Demaria Crockett as their second running back, and so I definitely think they'll make a move for someone. But yeah, I definitely think Duke Johnson will be pretty fantasy relevant this year.
Wait,
And
what was that
again,
guy's name?
Demaria Crockett.
You mean Demaria Crotch Rocket? Got
I
him.
see we're starting off on a hot streak here.
Took me a while to find the error.
Yeah.
But
All right.
yeah,
Well,
that not
yeah. With that,
just sorry. Continue. Ah!
Yeah, we're warming up. We're warming up, folks. Yeah. So the second biggest news that happened, and again, prior it was about a couple hours or maybe even an hour before
It
the
was like an
draft hit.
hour, yeah.
Yeah, it was like an hour at most. Andrew Luck has retired from the NFL. Once considered the best quarterback prospect in NFL history, has had multiple top 5 fantasy seasons, and was supposed to have a really good season and affect a lot of different skill players around him. He is now gone. How do you see this shaking out in terms of fantasy, Danny?
Well, first of all, to me, it's just it's like it's kind of sad because I've always been a huge Andrew Luck fan. I've really hold on, I've really enjoyed him coming out of the draft. He's jumped into that Peyton Manning role and took over right away, led his team to multiple deep playoff runs in the first few years, even though they were terrible. And just a really cool guy and everything. And so definitely gonna miss him playing. Definitely gonna miss him being on the Colts. So, and Saturday night we're sitting there getting ready for the draft. Cosmo, myself, Akshay, Duncan, we're all in Lubbock, and Cosmo looks up and he's like, Andrew Luck just retired from the NFL. And we start laughing and we're like, oh, this dude, Cosmo's just messing with us, trying to shake us up before the draft. And he's like, no, Adam Schefter just tweeted it. And I was like, what? And so then I pull it up, and of course, here it comes on all the notifications and apps and everything. It's like, yeah, Andrew Luck informed the team that he's retiring. And so I went ahead and, obviously that hurt a lot of the Colts players, but I went ahead and watched the press conference, and it was just really sad because he's just been dealing with so many injuries and rehab, and no one knows what his injuries are and everything. And he basically just said to everyone and was like, "Hey, I've got a good amount of money from this. I enjoyed my time here. It's not fun anymore, and I just want to go live my life. I want to go live with my wife, start a family." He's always had interest in becoming like an architectural engineer because he's got an engineering degree from Stanford and stuff. Like, I think he just wants to go live his life, and he finally sat back and realized, why do I want to do this the rest of my life? Like, I've got a good amount of money. I'm investing. I'm being smart with it, and he's realizing if he continues to play the way he plays, he's probably going to be hurting every day he gets up out of bed. It's going to hurt when he like bends down to pick up his kids and stuff like that. And he finally just said, this isn't, me sacrificing my body like this isn't worth it to me in the long run. And he left. And I don't know if he'll come back in a couple years, and I don't know what he's going to do, but you can tell it was a very hard decision for him. And I think it's kind of a sad day. And it was unfortunate that some Colts fans were booing him while he was on the field and stuff. But, I think, it was cool to see him play, and I hope he, finds his happiness in whatever he's going to go do. But it is kind of a sad day because, he was a big part of fantasy, he was a big part of football, and, it looked like there was this good future ahead with him and Frank Wright and Chris Ballard and the whole Colts organization. So, I'd say mostly it's just sad, but yeah, it definitely hurts T.Y. Hilton's value. I think T.Y. Hilton's going to be a lot more inconsistent now. Like, he's not going to have that stable floor every week with Jacoby or with Andrew Luck. Now with Jacoby Brissett, I think he's going to be a little more boom or bust each week. And I don't think it's like they just fall off a cliff. Like, Jacoby Brissett is pretty good, their coach is really good at scheming and stuff like that. I think they're still going to be pretty good, and but yeah, it definitely like let's say it takes them down from like on a like an A minus team, it takes them down to like a B probably or a B plus, like maybe a little bit of a B plus. I don't think it's like the end of the world, but it definitely hurts a lot of players that we were all had high hopes for this year. I know I was kind of rambling there, but what are your thoughts on it, Cosmo?
Yeah, I agree pretty much with everything. It's sad to see him go, but I mean, when you read his injury history, it's a laundry list of things. I mean, lacerated kidney, shoulder problems, the list goes on and on. And so
Apparently, he had a
I can,
ruptured stomach at one point.
yeah, some kind of abdominal tear or something. So I mean, he's had so many injuries, so I don't fault him one bit for wanting to step away. And maybe he'll be back, maybe not, but I guess until then, we will see. Good
All
job.
right. Well, that is our news for this week. Nothing too big. I mean, we've got, small things out there, but nothing really too important. We want to get to the major stuff this week. But before we do that, we're going to get into a quick thing with the transactions. Nothing too crazy on the waiver wires this week, so we're not really going to get into that. But we did have a trade already go down in the league, and I know a bunch of you right now might be like, "Yo, what the heck? Like a trade went down? I didn't even get a notification or anything." So this year, as you know, we all voted on this. We changed it to commissioner ruling for the trades instead of a veto system. Now, what I think happens is that none of us get notified about a trade anymore because we're not part of the veto system. So we're not sure if Cosmo gets notified or not yet, but he had his notifications off for this one, but he's got them on now. So Cosmo gets notified, or he'll find out about it. He said he's going to stay on top of it. So basically, what Cosmo's going to do now is he's going to, well, I'll let you explain this a little bit, Cosmo. But yeah, so basically a trade went down, and Cosmo's got a plan for how he wants to handle trades this season and all that kind of stuff. So go ahead, Cosmo.
Yeah, so we basically switched it to commissioner ruling just to make the trade process a lot more efficient and run smoothly. And so what's going to happen is anytime there's a trade, it doesn't matter if it's a fair trade or an unfair trade, every single trade I'll post in our group chat, just giving the details and nothing more. And if there is a trade that pretty much majority of the league is against or thinks unfair, then I will go and I will overrule it and veto it. But I will not veto a trade that I personally think is bad just because I don't like it. It's got to be a pretty significant uproar from the group chat for me to go back in and change it. And so we'll see. That system I think should work well, and hopefully we won't have any too big of issues with the trading process there.
Yeah, so um, like we took away the veto system because people were either just uninformed about the trade and just looking at like name value and vetoing, or it was out of spite. It was like, I don't like this guy getting these, making these moves and stuff. I don't want him to get this player, and so you hit veto. And so a lot of times it just led to vetoing of trades, or you had certain people go tell everyone to veto, either for Kamara Gate or just because you watched the trade happens over the weekend and you're watching your player and you get trade regrets and you go tell everyone to veto the trade. We don't want stuff like that happening. So it's up to Cosmo now. He's our commissioner. We all trust him with the stuff. Uh, so we're leaving it in his capable hands, but he is going to keep everyone informed. And if you have a problem with the trade, bring it up in the group me. But what we want to try to avoid is just saying like, I just don't want this guy getting that player, therefore I don't like the trade. Obviously we don't want like egregious or trades or like collusion happening, and Cosmo can spot that pretty easily and he'll stop it. But if it's a relatively close trade, but clearly one person is winning, or you think one person's winning or whatever, that's not really grounds to veto it. It's annoying, yes, but it's not grounds to veto it. So it will have some growing pains probably as we go on. But yeah, like Cosmo said, he'll post it in the group me. He'll keep everyone informed. You can let your opinion be known. And if we come to like a majority group consensus of whatever, of like this is just a terrible trade, it's going to ruin the league or whatever, Cosmo will go ahead and veto it. So, but Cosmo does. We're gonna say this. Cosmo has final say. So,
Ooh,
he can take our group consensus into consideration, but we're leaving it up to commissioner ruling. If he decides that you guys just aren't, or if we're just like complaining and we're just annoyed and there's no real like reasoning behind our stuff, he can be like, no, I think we need to let this one go through. So,
and
but
you can definitely slip me some dollars, and that may or may not
yeah,
help the trade go through if you give me something a little extra there.
yeah. We won't talk about that, but hit him up with some dollar bills. You know what I'm saying? But all right, anyway. So after all that being said, I don't think we even said the trade. So the trade going down is between none other than Akshay, of course, and Aaron. So we all know Aaron. Well, okay, we'll get into this in the draft. But anyway, so Aaron hit Akshay up with the trade pretty much like right after the draft and said he wanted to trade Aaron Jones and Philip Lindsay for Devonta Freeman and Tyler Lockett. So not not the world's craziest trade, but Aaron was lacking at wide receiver a little bit, kind of wanted it, and depending on what your thoughts are on Aaron Jones and Devonta Freeman, they're either even or Devonta Freeman's a little bit higher up, whatever. So anyway, Akshay was debating this all weekend, and they decided to finally pull the trigger on the trade. So, um, Cosmo, I'll let you start. What do you think about this trade?
Yeah, yeah, and I think this is a good time also just to have a disclosure out there before we get into this, and also the draft. Our opinions are our own opinions, and if we roast you, then sorry. Clearly, we don't make the best decisions all the time, so feel free to roast us back. But this is a podcast, and we're gonna make it as entertaining as possible, and so that means we're not gonna filter our opinions just to make people feel good. And so, with that being said, I think Akshay got fleeced big time here. I think this was a bad trade. I think Aaron clearly won the trade. Akshay, you can squint and kind of see how the trade makes sense, I guess. But I think at the end of the day, it's just I don't understand the reasoning behind making this trade. In terms of Devonta Freeman for Aaron Jones, like the top players in the deal, fine. I think that's whatever. I think they're pretty close in value. I think Freeman's a lot more safe. He's got a solidified role in that offense. Ito Smith is right behind him, who sucks. So I don't think he has any chance of losing his job. Whereas Aaron Jones, while I think he has a little bit more upside than Devonta Freeman, he also has a lot more downside because of Green Bay's love for the running back by committee. But if you want to say those two, that's a wash. It's a wash. Fine. The part I really hate about this trade is the Tyler Lockett for Philip Lindsay. I think Philip Lindsay was one of the biggest fades of this draft. He was great last year, performed very well, but a new coaching regime has entered Denver. It's not the same situation as it was last year. And the coaches have already come out and said that it's going to be a 50-50 timeshare between Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay. And quite frankly, I'm not even convinced that Philip Lindsay is a better running back than Royce Freeman. So I think Philip Lindsay could be in danger of not even being fantasy relevant this year, whereas Tyler Lockett is the number one receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. I know they don't pass the ball too much, but to be the number one receiver for Russell Wilson is usually a pretty lucrative position to be in. Add on to the fact that Tyler Lockett is really, really good. I mean, Russell Wilson had a perfect passer rating last year when he targeted Tyler Lockett, a big part because Tyler Lockett's great. And basically, I think Akshay just gave up a high-end receiver for a mediocre running back.
Yeah, and like we were talking about this before the podcast, like Akshay, you have David Johnson, Derrick Henry, who you took in the second round, which we're going to get to, and then now you have Aaron Jones and Philip Lindsay. You can only play 3 running backs max on your team each week. So now you've got 4, and so basically you made a trade of Devonta Freeman and Tyler Lockett for Aaron Jones because you've said that Philip Lindsay wasn't really on your radar. You just wanted Aaron Jones, and now Philip Lindsay's just going to be like, on your bench. Sure, maybe you can trade him to someone. Maybe he starts popping off. You play him instead. But basically, what I'm saying is you have four running backs that you could start, but you only got three spots, and then you gave up a potential top tier wide receiver um, in a really good situation with people getting hurt around him. He's the only guy. Got Russell Wilson as his quarterback, and so obviously this isn't like the most egregious thing. Like I agree, Aaron, probably fleeced him. Um, but back to what Cosmo said, this podcast is mostly for fun, inform you guys. It's our opinion. Don't take everything to heart. Not trying to roast people to death or whatever. And you're always welcome to clap back at us. But
Yeah, I have
um,
multiple bad decisions that you can point out. So
yeah,
feel free
so
to.
yeah, all I'm saying is like the trade is not the most egregious thing. Like it's not like, um he traded David Johnson for like Ito Smith or something, right? Like it's not like egregious and terrible. It's not, there isn't that much gap between the trade. It's more just the everything around and about the trade. Like Akshay comes out and says, I want this year to be different. I think last year I was taking too many shots on trades and not being patient and thinking about what I was doing and stuff like that. And I want this year to be different. And then 2 days after our draft, 2 weeks, we haven't even played game one yet, and you're making a trade. And it's like, why can't you just wait and see what your players are doing? And I don't, and it's just like Aaron obviously needed wide receiver help, and now he's got Tyler Lockett in there, and now Akshay's burning a hole in his bench with Philip Lindsay. So it's like it just didn't. The premise of it just didn't really make sense. Like it just kind of at the end of the day, it was like, you know,
What's the point?
it was like
What's the
a
point
tree
of doing
fell in
this?
the forest and like no one was around to hear it. Like it just didn't, it's like that saying or whatever, like did it actually fall or it just didn't happen and it's like what's the point and all that stuff. And so it's just kind of like why couldn't you just wait and see how the players are and stuff like that. But and like I said, we could be saying all this stuff, and in like 6 weeks, Aaron Jones is like a top five running back. Devonta Freeman's hurt, and Tyler Lockett's like not as great as we thought, and maybe actually traded Philip Lindsay to someone for some other piece or something. Like we could be totally wrong, and it could totally work out, and that's fine. And if you want to look back at that point and go, well, oh, you guys didn't know what you were talking about, like Akshay had a good feeling and it worked out. It's like, sure, but that's like you know, at max like 50% chance of happening. And it's more just the thought process behind the trade and what it represents going into this season, because we had all these trade scandals and everything last year and then all of a sudden 2 days after a draft we're already getting into another trade of someone hitting up Akshay and saying I'll give you this and stuff and so it's just anyway we don't want to get too Debbie Downer on this podcast and all this stuff but it's just like I think sometimes people just need to be patient and maybe see, let things play out. You don't always have to make a move instantly and go on a gut feeling and stuff like that. And so, um, but anyway, we'll see how it works out, and we'll see what happens. Maybe, like I said, by week 6, both of us are sitting here with Akshay, undefeated. Aaron Jones getting him like 25 points a game or something. So you
Yeah.
never know.
But
But
then if that happens, Akshay, feel free to make us eat crow.
yeah, if that happens, Akshay, we'll let you come on here and we'll give you like a 10-minute segment of you just roasting us if you want. So, um, but anyway, and there is an aspect to fantasy football that it is supposed to be fun. And so if he really wanted Aaron Jones, if Aaron Jones was his guy, he got Aaron Jones. So, you have him now. But and like I said, this isn't like the end of the world. You didn't trade, 6 great guys to one team and now there's super team or something like, it's not that egregious or whatever. It's more just the thought process behind it and what it represents and kind of going back to last year and stuff like that. So, but I guess with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on and get into our. Oh, I forgot to hit this button for Lamar Miller. Actually, or Cosmo, could you say the Lamar Miller update one more time?
Lamar Miller, the once reliable running back year after year, has now torn his ACL.
Oh!
All right, there we go. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, we're going to move into our draft special here. We're going to go through the draft, give our opinions and stuff like that. I'm sure as we get deeper into the draft, it'll be moving a little bit quicker and stuff like that, or maybe we'll gloss over a couple guys and get to the key parts of each round or something like that. But we're going to start going through here and getting through to each one, and so, yeah, all right, here we go. Let's get into the 2019 Sausage Bowl Draft Review. I didn't appreciate your scream over my my sound effect here, so we're gonna do that. Let's get into the 2019 Sausage Bowl Draft Review. All right, cool. Thank you, Cosmo. Stay in your lane, by the way. No, I'm just kidding.
I will when I get my. That's all I've been asking for 15 episodes.
You know what's funny is your mic cut out, so I don't even know what you said, boy. All right. Okay, so we're sitting here before the draft. We get our draft order 30 minutes before the draft opens. I know I just said draft a lot right there, but suck it. Taylor. So Taylor was letting us know that he went into like 72 hours of prayer before the draft to try and get the number one pick because, as we know, last year AB got taken from him by Aaron, and he had to take Saquon Barkley. He always wanted AB on his team, but now he's got Saquon Barkley. He wasn't happy about it, and then Saquon lit up the league, and now Saquon's his boy. He's got him like tattooed on his chest and probably his rear end and stuff too. So, So he really wanted him, and honestly, this year, if you did not have probably the first pick, maybe the second pick, you weren't getting Saquon Barkley. Like everyone wanted him at number 1 or number 2, so he had to get one of those. Everyone thought the chances were slim. He goes into 72 hours of prayer. We all make bets on who's going to get the first overall pick. 30 minutes before the draft, we're sitting there. We open our laptops. We enter the draft, and Taylor had the number 1 pick. His 72 hours of prayer worked. Cosmo, what did you think when you saw Taylor's name at the top of the list?
I want to know who Taylor was praying to because clearly he's got it figured out. Yeah, when we made those bets, I had a feeling Taylor might get it. I feel like Taylor has a propensity to sometimes get a little bit lucky in some ways, so I put my money on him, and I was faithfully rewarded there. But yeah, I think it's destiny. Like Taylor said it's destiny. Him and Saquon are meant to be together. They have a loving bond, and that bond proved strong this year.
Yep. So
until
there you have it.
He tears his ACL week 2.
Who knows if he made a deal with the devil or his prayers were answered from up above? I don't know, but I guess we'll have to go through this season to find out what Taylor did for that number 1 pick. But there you had it, Taylor with the number 1 pick. Quick rundown of the draft order: we had Taylor at number 1, Rahi at number 2, myself at number 3, Aaron at number 4, Nahum at number 5, Brandon at number 6. Akshay at number 7, which I think he was 7 last year. Cameron at number 8. I feel like Cameron is always either 8 or 9. Have you noticed that? Like he's always 8 or 9, and he always has to like draft a wide receiver first. But anyway, Cameron at number 8, Cosmo at number 9, and Duncan at number 10. So he went from 1st to 10th from last year. So kind of crazy flip flop there. But yeah, and just quick announcement. I think that I have no more platform where I can complain. And also, I've noticed that I think I do a lot more complaining when other people in this league also go through a lot of turmoil and stuff with either their draft position or things that happen to them during the season, injuries, stuff like that. And so I'm going to work on that. I just want everyone to know I'm going to work on that this season. I'm going to stop trying to make my issues the forefront of everything and always put them on everyone else and kind of be like, okay, you know what, other people have worse problems than me. So I appreciate the 3rd overall pick. I know I always complain about how I have a bottom pick, but I was fortunate this year. So like I said, I'm gonna work on that this year. I'm gonna try not to make my stuff so uh, in the front pages and all that stuff complaining about, oh, this happened, or this guy got injured, or like other people are going through it too, so I apologize, and I'm gonna work on that. Just want everyone to know. You feel me, Cosmo?
Yeah, there are people starving in Africa. There are little children dying every day. So I think, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
All right. Well, so Taylor, number one pick, of course, takes Saquon Barkley. Now, Taylor was in and out of this draft all night, disconnecting. I mean, who knows if he was disconnecting, reconnecting, if he just didn't care about the draft after a few rounds, whatever he was doing. But he took Saquon number one overall. I know people have a lot of opinions on Saquon this year. What are you feeling, Cosmo, with Saquon number one here?
Yeah, I think Saquon going number one is a pretty standard pick. I think almost everyone in the league would have either picked him first or second. I think he'll have a great year. I think he's just too talented to not, and he's like one of the true running backs that can both be elite in the run game as well as the passing game. I do think he will take a step back from last year. And I mean, and to be fair, last year he had like one of the best fantasy seasons of all time. So even a step back would still be a pretty good season. But I am a little bit concerned about that Giants offense. I know Eli Manning gets a lot of crap, and I mean, mostly deserved, but Eli actually put up, okay raw numbers last year. He passed a lot. He put up a lot of yardage. I'm afraid when the inevitable switch to Daniel Jones happens, who I know is lighting it up against second string defenses right now, but I'm really afraid that Daniel Jones, when he comes in, that might have an impact on Saquon Barkley. I also think that the loss of OBJ is going to have a negative impact on him. His splits with and without OBJ are a little stark. So I think he's going to take a step back. I don't think he's going to be as good as he was last year, but I still think he's going to be one of the top three running backs.
Yeah,
If that
I
makes
think
sense.
at worst it could be like what happened to David Johnson last year, where like people were drafting him in the top 4 or 5, and they just didn't feel that return on the investment. But he still ended the number 10 running back overall. He had enough good weeks to help you out. If he was your number one guy and you didn't really have other great options at running back, yeah, he kind of hurt you. But he wasn't awful. Like it just wasn't what you paid for. And so at worst, that could happen with Saquon this year. Like you take the number one overall pick and he finishes like the 8, 9, or 10 running back, and you know, that might stink a little bit, but it's not, the end of the world. And like you said, yeah, it's just, OBJ is gone. Their receivers keep getting injured. And like you said, they've got Eli and Daniel Jones. And so who's to say that teams won't just be like, hey, we're going to put 8, 9 guys down in the box to stop Saquon, and good luck if you can pass or not. And so as you saw last year when OBJ got hurt, the last like 3 games of the season, something like that, his numbers took a hit. Like he was averaging like 23, 24 points a game when OBJ was there, and then he was averaging like 16, 17 points a game when OBJ wasn't there. So who knows what could happen? I think, yeah, of course, there will be a little bit regression, but like you said, he's got a safe enough floor and volume and all that stuff to where he's not gonna, he's not gonna kill you. But maybe at the end of the day, you're just a little unhappy. Although I think Taylor will be happy with whatever he does. So I think Taylor is fine with him at number one, and I think he's going to be a great part of his team there. And I think he'll be happy to have him this season. Um, but I will say, last year I saw someone do a stat where they went and took out all of the explosion runs by Saquon. So all the ones that popped for like a 50-yard touchdown or like a 50-yard run or something like that. I forget what the threshold was where they cut it off, but um, they took out all of his like, super long crazy play runs, and his average yards per carry at that point was like 2.9, which is like
Mm-hmm.
not good. And so um, if those big explosive runs don't come, his value could be hurt. But I've seen people make the argument that, well, teams are stacking the box against him, which means they're bringing their defenders down. And so that creates more opportunities for explosive runs because everyone's committing so much to him. So if he, bounces a certain way or gets through or gets a certain block, there's no one there to stop him, so he can just go. And so
Yeah.
maybe that's why he had so many explosive runs and stuff. But um, like I said, he's a generational talent, athletic freak. He'll find a way to make it work. He's just, he's carrying that team and he's not getting a whole lot of help from them. So he's going to have to do it all on his own, which might lead to a little bit of disappointment, but he's obviously very safe with the volume. So I don't think anyone should ever be upset about having him on their team or anything like that. I would just say don't, lower your expectations a little bit. And if he exceeds them, good. But at least it'll prepare you in case he doesn't live up to what the hype is. So, but all right, well that was Taylor number one pick, Saquon Barkley. Now let's go into Rahi at number two, which might have been a little bit of surprise to some people. Cosmo, were you surprised to see Rahi take Christian McCaffrey number two?
Not really. And actually, if I had the number one pick, depending on if Taylor was behind me or not, I think I would have picked Christian McCaffrey actually number one. To me, I think he's the best option this year. Um, he has a lot of the same innate abilities that Saquon has in being an elite running back in both the running game and the passing game. I mean, he literally put up 1,000 rushing, 1,000 receiving yards last year. But he's also on a really good offense that I think is getting better from last year. So I think he's my number one guy. So it didn't surprise me at all for Rahi to get him at number two. And I think it was a really good pick.
Yeah, and like so with these top four, I'm gonna throw Zeke into here. With these top four
Mm.
guys, Barkley, McCaffrey, Kamara, Zeke, um, you're splitting hairs between all of them. Like
Yeah.
it like at the end of the day, they're all gonna be up there at the top, barring any sort of crazy situation with holdout or injury or anything like that. You're splitting hairs, and so you can't really go in a wrong direction here. It's mostly just who you think you want on your team and stuff like that. So if we have any sort of like hate against any of these players, it is no way we're saying like, oh, these guys are just terrible and you shouldn't have done that. Like it's splitting hairs. They're all going to be great. They're all going to be good for your team. It just comes down to like tiny little personal preferences of who you would take and who you wouldn't take. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I was
I
thinking,
just want to make it clear that I would have taken McCaffrey first. But if Taylor was behind me at number two, I would have 100% taken Saquon just to spite Taylor.
I think we might all have done that, unless you were fearing for your life because he might have found you in the middle of the night or something. So, but yeah, I actually kind of had the same thought at number one. Um, Coming way earlier in this year, I always told myself if I had the number one pick, I'm taking Zeke. I don't care. He was getting more volume in the passing game.
Mm.
He is the offense. They give him the volume. He just wants to eat. He just goes and gets you
He
points and
respects women.
touchdowns. Well, we're not gonna get into that. So I was like, I'm gonna take Zeke. I think he's the safest, most consistent option there at number one on
Mm.
a good offense. So I was gonna take Zeke, but then of course the whole holdout thing happens, everything. So yeah, as I got closer to the season, I started to lean more towards Christian McCaffrey because what he does in the passing game, like you said, the amount of snaps that he plays for his team, um, and just how good he is at running and everything like that. So he's just an all around really great uh, running back. And so yeah, you're right. Like I was actually really considering him at number one. So I wasn't shocked that Rahi took him here based on Christian McCaffrey. Oh, funny memory of my favorite memory of Christian McCaffrey is it was like week 12 or something of last year, and it was Cosmo versus Aaron. And basically, whoever won this matchup pretty much determined who was going to make the playoffs in the last spot, right? It was the last seed, I think. Um,
Yeah.
Whoever was going to make the playoffs in the last spot between Aaron or Cosmo, and it came down to this matchup, and whoever won would get ahead in the rankings and probably hold that spot. Um, so it was a really important match, and I remember Cosmo texted me and said, "Look, dude, I'm gonna turn off all my Yahoo notifications. I'm gonna just mute the group me, mute text messages, and I'm just gonna not watch any football today because I don't want to get tilted. I'm just gonna go do some stuff with my girlfriend, whatever. Um, and I'll check later on." And so I was like, okay, sounds good, dude. And so I'm sitting there watching the games and stuff like this, keeping up with this, keeping up with the scores and everything. And I go check Aaron and Cosmo's matchup, and all of a sudden Aaron's like like 50 points ahead of Cosmo, and I was like, what is happening? And so I go click on the thing, and Christian McCaffrey had like 42 points. He had like 100 yards rushing, like 110 yards receiving, and like two touchdowns, both rushing and or two rushing touchdowns and two receiving touchdowns. He was going off, and I was like, oh my gosh, Cosmo's gonna lose this matchup. Cosmo ended up winning the matchup, but I just remember it being like checking the thing and just feeling so bad for Cosmo because I didn't want to text him or anything. And I was just like, he's gonna look later, open this up, and he's gonna see that Christian McCaffrey went off. But Cosmo ended up winning that, and we all
Thankfully,
know
it
that
had
went
a
up. But
happy ending, unless you're Aaron.
yeah,
But
so yeah, no hate on the Christian McCaffrey pick here. The only reason I say it surprised me a little bit is because like I don't know. Okay, so on the Yahoo rankings, it went Saquon, Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Zeke. That was the order. And I think Rahi will be the first to admit this. He doesn't do a ton of research in the offseason and kind of focuses a lot on the Yahoo rankings there. And so um, I just thought for sure he was going to take Alvin Kamara with the number 2 pick, especially with Mark Ingram being moved out and stuff like that. Um, so when he took Christian McCaffrey, it did kind of surprise me for a little bit, but like nothing wrong with the pick at all. Like I think great pick. Um, I think Kamara would have been a great pick too, obviously, but um, so no, I think good pick. It'll be a solid. Christian McCaffrey was one of the most consistent running backs last year, um,
mhm.
so and he just gets a ton of volume. So I think really good pick there. Cornerstone piece for his team this year. So um, next up, we have the third overall pick, which was myself. And so I decided here to go ahead and take Alvin Kamara. I was choosing between Zeke and Alvin Kamara. I either wanted to take Zeke and just kind of hope that he comes back from the holdout because I think he's so good and everything. I wasn't at all considering, James Conner, David Johnson, Lev Bell, Nick Chubb, any of the wide receivers. It was literally just between Kamara and Zeke. And even though, Kamara can be a little scary sometimes because he doesn't get like the crazy workload that some of these running backs get. He's just very efficient and good at a great football player. So sometimes that's a little scary, but I just thought to myself like, what if this Zeke holdout lasts a while? Like, do I want
Mhm.
this headache? Um, Rahi went through everything with Lev Bell last year. I had James Conner, so I was a little bit in the mix too and everything. And so I just said, you know what? I'm going to take the guy that, his team really cares about him. They want to focus everything around him. Um, he's their guy and he's their star, and he's not going to come with the headache or question marks of a holdout. And so I just decided to go with Alvin Kamara, like I said, splitting hairs. Decided to go with the guy that I just know is going to be there week 1 for sure. And so decided to go with him. And plus, he's a great Twitter follow, so decided to put him on my
Boom.
team. But what would you say about that, Cosmo?
Yeah, I think Kamara is like pretty clear pick here at number 3. I just think as much as I like Zeke too, Zeke would be my number 1 running back if he was not dealing with all this crap. But yeah, I just don't think there's any reason to take unnecessary risk when there's like a really good option available to you in Kamara. I think the one thing that separates him from those other two guys is just the workload. I heard this like interview where this analyst I follow, Evan Silva, he told a story of how he talked to Sean Payton at the combine, and apparently he asked Sean Payton, is Kamara going to get like a monster workload this year? And Sean Payton said, "No, Kamara's soft." So,
Yeah, I
uh,
remember that.
it,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think he's going to be in the same role he's been the last 2 seasons. He's not going to get a monster workload, but he's so good at what he does that he's still going to perform. So, yeah, I think this is a clear number 3 pick here for you at Kamara. No brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean Kamara, you can watch Kamara run. Like he tries to avoid hits. He wants to be like more elusive and shaky and run out of bounds or stuff like that. And he's really good at the passing game. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he said that. But like I said, they want to focus the offense around him, and he's their Lamborghini, and they're going to use it. And so, um, it'll still work out. So, all right,
Yep.
moving into number 4, we've got Aaron here. Uh, oh, I forgot. I guess we're not. I forgot we weren't saying their names. So Taylor is now bow down to Saquon is his team. Um, Rahi is Curry on Yo Donor. I am still with my nips, you know. And now we're here
Ooh.
to Aaron, who is Rub a Tug Chubb, because Aaron, to the shocker of everyone, took Nick Chubb at number 4. Cosmo, what did you
Ow.
think when you saw this pick?
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, okay. I'll say this: out of anyone in this league, I'm the biggest Nick Chubb fan. He saved my season last year. If I didn't get Nick Chubb on my team, I probably wouldn't have made the playoffs. I would have had to deal with that shame. So I love Nick Chubb. I think this was the first bad pick of the draft. Um, I think Nick Chubb is a good player. And when I say I think it was a bad pick, I think it's just all about value of where I think he should have gone
Right,
versus where he
right.
went. I like Nick Chubb, but he's proven absolutely zero ability in the pass game. I know there's talk saying he's going to get more involved this year, but until I see that, I mean, they said last year Jordan Howard was going to be involved in the pass game, so it's really hard to believe that. Um, and Kareem Hunt's coming back in Week 10. And while I don't think Kareem Hunt is going to necessarily take Chubb's job, I think Chubb is good enough to hold on to that job. He's definitely going to eat into his workload a little bit, at least. And so while I like Chubb, I think he's talent-wise one of the best running backs in the league. He's going to be on a good offense. I just think there's so many issues that I don't think he's quite worthy of a first-round pick. And I think it was a little bit of a reach here.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said. Like you said, Nick Chubb, not a bad player. Great guy, great teammate, really fun to watch. One of the most, surprisingly, one of the most elusive running backs in the league. If you go look at the stats and stuff like that, um, can always give you that big play, but he can also get the chunk yardage that you need and stuff like that. So, not a bad player, but like you said, it's all about value and where you can get him and stuff like that. And while he would not have come back around to Aaron in the second round, so if he really wanted him, he had to take him here. It's more just like it comes down to like, would you rather um, draft Zeke and just hope the holdout ends in a couple weeks and then you get a top guy, or take Nick Chubb? But then you also had like James Conner, who's on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They always use like one running back and give him a ton of volume. You got David Johnson, who, even though it's kind of a up in the air about the offense, he's an elite running back and stuff like that. And these people get pass volume and stuff like that. And then of course you've got like DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams. But if Nick Chubb was his guy, he believes in him, he wants him. Obviously, had to take him right here, or he was not going to come back to him. So,
Yeah.
but like you said, yeah, there is chance for regression and him to not live up to like the number 4 pick. But yeah, it was a little surprising. Um, I personally probably would have taken Zeke here, or James Conner or David Johnson, but
Yeah.
it could work out. Nick Chubb could be a top guy. Maybe he does get more pass volume, but like you said, with OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, Antonio Callaway, David Njoku, like there's a lot of places for the ball to go, and so the chances that Nick Chubb is all of a sudden some crazy pass catching running back, it's pretty low.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
And there was some stat the other day I heard where it was like, to be a top 5 running back, you have to have at least like 70 receptions or 60 receptions or something like that for
Yeah.
the last like 4 years. And I don't think Nick Chubb's gonna get there. Like maybe he'll get 30 or so, but um, yeah. So like you said, it could just end up being that he doesn't live up to that price tag, but he's still a good player. So we'll see how it works out. Um, but yeah, all right. Moving on to number 5, we had Nahum here, and we'll say his team name in a second because it's all about the pick. He takes Ezekiel Elliott, takes a shot on Zeke right here at number 5, hoping that the holdout doesn't last too long and that when it ends, that he has a top 3 running back in the league. And so Nahum went ahead and changed his name to Zeke Respects Women and changed the profile picture to Zeke ferociously eating cereal with milk spilling everywhere. Hilarious, made me laugh a ton when I first saw it. So, but yeah, I don't have any issue taking Zeke here. Oh, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say he doesn't respect security guards though.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
will
he
say that.
respects women, not security guards. So watch out if you're a security guard. But yeah, so I don't have any problem taking Zeke here at number 5. I know the holdout could last long. Personally, I think they will get it done. I think at most he misses 2 games, and even if he misses 2 games, when he comes back, they've got a great offense. He's the guy that they want to focus around in the offense. Um, so he's going to get the volume, and he'll be a great pick once he comes back. Of course, if the holdout continues, then it'll be unfortunate. But I think, over the other picks of James Conner, David Johnson, Hopkins, Adams here, I would rather have the shot on Zeke and hope that the holdout ends soon than take one of those people and miss out on Zeke. So yeah, I don't have a problem here, and we'll see if he comes back and is a good player for Nahum.
Yeah, I don't have. Yeah, I mean, it's a good pick. If I was in that position, I don't know if I could have pulled the trigger on Zeke. Um, I think I was like 50-50 playing that scenario in my head. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. If he plays, he's going to be one of the best running backs. It's just whether or not what's going to happen with this holdout. So I guess we will see you there. But moving on to our 6th pick here, we have
Yeah.
Brandon, and Brandon took. Oh,
No, go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
Brandon with the 6th pick in the draft. A little bit of a surprise pick if you're going off ADP, although I personally did not dislike the pick at all. Brandon went with James Conner, your boy James Conner.
My
How do you feel
boy.
about this pick?
Look, I love it, dude. Okay, I don't care what anyone says about James Conner. I don't care how they compare him to Le'Veon Bell. He did his ish last year, okay, and he came in and he stepped up, and he's a great guy, and he helped my team when I needed it most. When Jerick McKinnon decided to wreck his knee for the rest of his life a week before the season.
Ouch!
Yeah. Oh, where is it?
Ow!
Yeah. So he was great for my team. Like you said, if you're going off ADP, all that kind of stuff, you wouldn't take him at 6 or, whatever. ADP rankings probably didn't have him at 6, but Brandon felt confident enough to take him here, and I don't really have a problem with it. Like James Conner, you go back and look at the history of the Steelers, they always use one running back. I don't care what people are saying about Jalen Samuels. I don't care what they're saying about him coming in for passing downs. Like the proof is in the history of the Steelers, and they still have the same head coach, they still have the same staff, all that stuff. And if you go watch the preseason when the starters are in, it's been all James Conner. I think Big Ben had 14 snaps, or I don't know if Big Ben was in, but the first team offense had 14 snaps in the third preseason game, which is supposed to be like the dress rehearsal, all that stuff. And James Conner was in for all 14. So I don't care what people are saying about this committee. It's going to turn into a committee. They're going to change their philosophy. It's going to be the same. And, people, they say James Conner isn't a pass catching back like the way Le'Veon Bell is. And I'm like, sure, maybe James Conner's not running out to the edges for like a 40-yard catch or something. But I mean, he did have some crazy catches last year, and he caught like 4 or 5 passes every game. Like he had great receiving numbers, and so he's really good at that. He actually is more explosive than Le'Veon Bell. You can go back look at all the metrics. He had way more 20-plus runs than Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon is this, we know him as this patient runner. Like he waits for the holes to open up and then he goes through and stuff like that. But you never really saw him. You saw him as like this volume, caught passes, all that stuff, but you never really saw him as this like streaking down the side of the field running back. And James Conner brings that edge. And, he has a tremendous story of fighting through cancer, beating cancer, getting drafted, and the team loves him and he loves to be there, and he works hard and everything. And so I think Brandon wasn't in the best spot of drafting here. Number 6 was kind of bad this year because you're like, do I take James Conner, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, or do I go with like the top receivers, Hopkins, Adam? It was just a really tough spot to go, and I think taking James Conner here, I don't think I don't think Brandon is going to regret it. Um, and I think he's going to get the volume and he's going to be good. Last year, he was putting up numbers similar to Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley until he got injured. And so, once he came back from the injury, then they had been playing Jalen Samuels a lot and they were having all the AB troubles and all this stuff. And so it didn't look as good towards the end of the year. But when he's there and he's the guy, he's great. So I don't have a problem
Yeah.
with it. I know I kind of went off on a rant there, but what do you think about it?
No, yeah, I agree 100%. I think, yeah, the only concern there is just how good is the Steelers offense going to be now that they've lost Antonio Brown. It might, I'm not 100% convinced that the Steelers offense is going to be one of the top tier offenses it has been in the past, meaning, there might be less touchdown opportunities for James Conner. But aside from that, yeah, he's the main guy here. He's running behind that offensive line, and he's versatile in that he can run and catch passes. So, I don't think I would have picked James Conner. I had one running back over him at this point, and we'll get into that later. But I kind of like the pick here by Brandon doing that.
Yeah, no, I think it was good. I think Brandon just said, you know what? I'm not going to try to trick my. I know in fantasy, it seems like we always try to do this to ourselves. We try to always like talk ourselves out of players, and I think we always come up with these narratives. And like he's like, I'm not going to trick myself. I'm going to go with the history of the Steelers. I'm going to take James Conner, and just gonna, take it and be confident in it. So he did. But getting into our seventh pick here, we had Akshay. Um, always entertaining. Akshay. Number 7 here takes David Johnson. So he doesn't decide to go with Hopkins or Adams here, and doesn't decide to go with Le'Veon Bell. He goes with David Johnson. New offense, Cliff Kingsbury as head coach, Kyler Murray as quarterback. Um, obviously offense is going to be, it has to just be better than last year. Like last year,
Mm.
the offensive coordinator was so bad, was just running David Johnson up the middle, not using his skill set at all, not a spread offense. Now Cliff Kingsbury wants to come in, spread the offense out, use David Johnson as a pass catching running back is where he shines. I went back and looked at some college stats, and Cliff Kingsbury, his offense always had the highest amount of passes to the running back across all college teams. So expect that to be in there a lot. So I don't think it's a bad pick by Akshay. I think it's a good cornerstone piece. Obviously, he's got question marks because it's like, well, what if Kyler Murray just kind of stinks it up? What if the offense isn't
It's
as good as people
impossible.
think?
Impossible. Not gonna happen.
Yeah. So, but I think if at this point you're like, you know what? I want one of those top running backs on my team. I don't care if I'm missing out on Hopkins or Adams. I'm going to go ahead and take him, pull the trigger. I don't have a problem with it. It's a tough spot to draft from. So I don't have a problem with it. What about you?
Yeah, and actually, I apologize. I'm going to switch out mics real quick. I'll do this right after I talk about David Johnson.
All right.
Your AirPods are running low, but um, yeah, I think it's a great pick by Akshay. I think you got some value here with David Johnson. I think at worst case scenario, of course, barring some bad injury, I think worst case scenario is he does what he did last year. I don't think it can get worse than it got last year with Mike McCoy, probably the most idiotic offensive coordinator we've ever seen, calling plays for him, and Josh Rosen doing what he did. I I think worst case scenario, he's like the number 9 or number 10 running back. Best case
Right.
scenario, he could be the best running back in all of football. I mean, he's
Right.
he's one. 2 years ago, he was the number 1 running back in fantasy, and I think that skill set's still there. So I really like this pick by Akshay. I think it's a good running back to start off your team.
Yeah, and like I know people can look at the Cardinals preseason and been like, well, it hasn't been that great, but I think they're hiding a lot of their offense. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury wants to hold on, let me mute you, Cosmo, real quick while you make the change. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury wants to reveal too much of his offense right now. You can kind of tell when you watch them, and they talk about it after each preseason game. So I think there'll be a lot more schemes involved with getting David Johnson going in the passing game and everything. So yeah, like you said, he's got that ceiling of a top 3 running back. He picked him as the number 7 running back right here. Worst case scenario probably ends up as like the number 10. So it's not the end of the world. And it's always such an advantage to have those running backs on your team. So it goes in and takes him here. No issue with it at all. And now let's move into Cameron at the number 8 pick. His team name is Scott's Tots. I thought it said Thoughts at first. But no, it's Scott's Tots. Do you know what that means, Cosmo? Is that a reference to something? Am I missing this here? I don't quite know what that means. All right, guess Cosmo's still changing out his head microphone and all that stuff. I can't hear you, Cosmo. So if you're trying to talk, um, oh, what? Are you back? All right. Always great production here at the Sausage Bowl podcast. But anyway, so I'll just go ahead and fill in here. I don't know what Scott's Tots means. Cameron, if you can let us know, that'd be great. Once Cosmo comes back, he'll let me know if he knows. But um, yeah, so Cameron here at number 8 took DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like Cameron always is like 7, 8, or 9, and always ends up with DeAndre Hopkins. So nothing new here, but still great pick. DeAndre Hopkins, incredibly consistent. Uh, Great receiver, great hands, runs great routes. Um, has a young quarterback that loves to just throw the ball and target him a lot. Always seems to get open. So yeah, great pick here. Uh, Breaking news, just got a text from Cosmo here. He says he's having troubles with his mic, needs a couple minutes, keep rolling without me. Well, you know what? The Danny train's going to keep on rolling without you, bro. All right, here we go. So we're getting in with Scott's Tots. Cameron, don't know what your name means, but I'm going to keep rolling with it. Hopefully it's nothing like last year where I was getting tricked into saying something that I shouldn't be saying. I don't think it is, but I'm just going to keep rolling. I'm keep saying it, Scott's Tots. You know what I'm saying? All right. Takes DeAndre Hopkins, and great pick here. Obviously, splitting hairs between him and Davante Adams. Kind of basically just going with who you prefer. But DeAndre Hopkins has always been there, always doing it. He's got the history. So Cameron took him. Nothing wrong with that pick. Obviously, it's a hard spot to pick because at that point you're left with like Le'Veon Bell, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon at the running back position, and it's like, I'd rather just take one of those top wide receivers. So that's what Cameron did, secured up a top wide receiver, going to be a great cornerstone for his offense or his team. I don't know why I keep saying that. But yeah, so not a bad pick at all. Oh, Cosmo, you back?
I'm back. Sorry
All
about
right,
that.
cool. Here we go. Cosmo getting on board the train now. We are at number 8, Scott's Tots. Cameron taking DeAndre Hopkins. Quick question: Do you know what Scott's Tots is? Like, is that referring to anything? Am I saying something that I shouldn't be saying on the air?
No, I might be mistaken, but I think it's an Office reference. Uh, there's an episode where Michael Scott, like 20 years in the past, promised these kids free tuition after they graduated, and then 20 years came and he couldn't pay them. And they all thought they were going to college for free. And the program was called Scott's Tot. I think that's what it is. So.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, so I was just going over about how at this point in the draft. Well, first of all, I said I feel like Cameron's always 7, 8, or 9, and he always ends up with DeAndre Hopkins. Like, doesn't it feel like that to you? But
Yeah.
yeah. So at this point in the draft, the running backs that are left, it's like Lev Bell, who's got question marks, was out last year, was reportedly like 280 pounds before he came back. Dalvin Cook, who's got his injury history. Joe Mixon, who's got a bad offensive line and stuff. So at this point, it's like, you know what? I'd rather take the top wide receiver, get that positional advantage over everyone. And you're kind of splitting hairs between him and Davante Adams. But DeAndre Hopkins has done it more, been the top guy. So Cameron decided to take him here. Not a bad pick. But otherwise, do you have anything to add to that? Any insight?
No, I think DeAndre would have been my pick if he didn't get taken there. I think he's been consistently the best or like the second best receiver in fantasy the last couple of years. So like the pick here.
All right. Now we move into our boy, our co-host, Cosmo.
The winner of Sausage Bowl 7.
The winner of Sausage Bowl 7. Number 9 here in the draft has changed his name to, would you like to say this, Cosmo?
Oh, no, you go ahead.
All right. He has changed his name to Ching Chong Wee Wee. And let it be known that Cosmo is Asian. And he forced me to say that. And so, yeah.
That's
don't
not
come
what I
after me.
heard.
But all right. Anyway, so Cosmo here is at number 9. Also a difficult spot to draft because you're left with kind of the bottom of the top-ish tier running backs, but you still have great receivers at your disposal. So he decided to go with Davante Adams, the most consistent wide receiver last year. Incredible for Duncan's team. and nowhere to go but up, it seems like, with the new offense and Aaron Rodgers coming back, being healthy and everything. So, um, yeah, no problem with this pick at all. Going to be a great part of your team. Extremely consistent. How did you feel about this pick?
Ooh, I got real excited. I felt good about it. I think he's yeah, almost I was gonna do a sexual innuendo, but I decided not to. But yeah, I really was glad Devontae Adams fell to me. I thought about securing my running back here, but I couldn't pass up Devontae. He's, like you said, the most consistent running back last year. Nowhere to go but up. Well, yeah, and I've seen him perform well also with Brett Hundley. So I think, like, even worst case scenario, if Rodgers gets hurt, I still have confidence that he'll perform. So overall, I'm very happy with this pick.
Yeah, it's good all around. He's incredible route runner. If you go watch his routes, it's beautiful. Like he's tearing people up, breaking ankles, always open, great hands and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, great pick here. All right, and finally we have our number 10 pick from first to last from last year. He had the number 1 overall pick. Now he's got the 10th. We got Duncan here. Gay frogs. Um, don't know why he's going after frogs like that, but that's what Duncan does. He doesn't like frogs, goes after them. So, or I guess he's not really going after them. He's just, they're gay.
He's
Nothing wrong
supporting
with
the
that.
gay frogs. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. He's good. He's supporting them. Um, you know, go Pride, all that stuff. Nothing wrong with that. But anyway, he takes Le'Veon Bell, number 10. What are your thoughts on this grabbing the once top 2 pick of Le'Veon Bell here at number 10?
Ooh, Le'Veon Bell to me is like one of the hardest guys to measure this year because on one hand, it's Le'Veon Bell. Like before his, suspension last year, or not suspension, his holdout. He was consistently one of the top running backs every single year. Uh, but when you look into Le'Veon Bell this year, I feel like there's just so many red flags that make me a little bit nervous for him. One, he's going for one of the best offenses in all football in the Steelers that had one of the best offensive lines to a questionable offense. I think there is some optimism there with Sam Darnold, but there's also a lot of question marks there. And they also have one of the worst offensive lines in football. He hasn't played in a full year, and there are reports that he's gained weight. He, and to add on to the fact he has Adam Gase as his head coach, who, as reported earlier in the season or in the offseason, did not want Le'Veon Bell on the team. And we saw what he did to Kenyon Drake last year. So I think there's a lot of red flags. I think there's some real downside here with Le'Veon Bell. But I also think that he's Le'Veon Bell. He's getting paid a lot of money, and they're going to run him the ball. So overall, I think
Yeah.
it's a fun pick here.
I think you kind of had to go like Duncan here at the turn had to grab a running back and had to grab a wide receiver. You just can't go double running back. You can't go double wide receiver at the number 10 pick because you wait so long for your next pick that you're just so far down in the tier of player, you're missing out on so much. So I think at this point, he's like, I got to take a running back. Right now, I'm choosing between Lev Bell, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook. And out of the 3 of those, the one with the least amount of, well, I wouldn't say the least amount of question marks, but the one that probably is the safest pick out of the 3 of those is Lev Bell. And so he took Lev Bell here. Like you said, the GM of Jets gets Le'Veon Bell. Adam Gase isn't happy with it. They fire the GM. And then Adam Gase goes and gets Ty Montgomery, who's been getting a lot of play in the preseason. So here's to hoping that the money that they're paying Le'Veon Bell doesn't, overcomes that, and that Adam Gase finds a good way to use Le'Veon Bell instead of just holding a grudge against him like he did Kenyon Drake and not using him a whole lot. But yeah, we'll see how that goes this year. I think he just had to take him, and he was the best available. So he grabbed him. But hey, best case scenario, he's a top 5 running back, and he got him at number 10. So
Yeah.
not too bad. But that is our first round. So Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, David Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, and Le'Veon Bell. All right, now moving into our second round, we probably got to go a little bit faster here, but we'll still get some good analysis in there. Duncan, of course, had the first pick in the second round. and he decided to go with Julio Jones. And I think this is a fantastic pick here. It kind of reminds me of last year when I had the number 10 pick and I went Melvin Gordon and then Julio Jones in the second round. Um, Julio Jones is just always a stud yardage monster. He's going to get 1,500 yards easily. It's just about the touchdowns with him. Hopefully, they come a little bit more with Dirk Cutter there instead of Steve Sharkesian. Um, hopefully they've got a little bit better ways to use him in the end zone. Um, but there is one stat that I will say: Julio Jones apparently averages like I forget what it was. It was like 4 or 5 more fantasy points per game when they're in a dome. I don't know why, but when they play in a dome stadium, Julio Jones does better. And if you look at the Falcons' schedule this year, they play 13 out of 16 games in a dome. It's crazy. I don't know how it happened. A lot of experts don't really know how that schedule ended up that way. But Julio Jones is, he's on the best playing field 13 out of 16 games this year. And I think he's one of the top 3 wide receivers with Hopkins and Adams. And for Duncan to be able to get a guy that could end up as a top 5 running back and one of the top 3 running back or wide receivers here at 10 and 11, I think that's a pretty good pick. What about you?
I agree with everything you said. Pretty solid pick here at number 11.
All right. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So so we'll go ahead and move on to the next pick of the round 2. My pick here, I went with Dalvin Cook, and I need to take a second to love on my guy Dalvin Cook. Out of every single fantasy player in here, this is my guy this year. I'm 100% all in on Dalvin Cook. I would have taken him over Zeke. I would have taken him over Connor. I would have taken him over Chubb and Lev Bell. I love this guy. He's a guy I hated last year. I called him my bust last year, but now this year, he is my man, and I think he's going to lead me to the championship. How about that, Danny?
I didn't even know. I did not expect this. I was not aware that this was going to happen tonight. I did not expect this coming from you, man, because you were so against him last year. And like you were so against Aaron taking him last year and stuff. And he was like your bust of the year before the season and all this stuff, which I mean, he did turn out to not, bust a little bit. But anyway, so you're saying if you were at number 4, you would have taken Dalvin Cook?
Well, I might have taken Zeke over him. That's the only one I might have. But besides that, yeah, I had him over every single other running back.
Number 5,
and I might have gone receiver. I might have gone receiver too. But
all right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have him that high. I think I just don't see how he can, unless he gets injured, which, granted, he's had some injuries in the past. That's the only way I can see this going wrong for Dalvin Cook. But I think there's just so much to like. He's proven in his short time in the NFL that he's an elite running back, both in the run game and the pass game. He has like a 4.8 yards per carry career. He was great in college, and he's also very good in the pass game. The Vikings fired their offensive coordinator at week 13 because that guy wanted to pass the ball so much. In the last 3 weeks of the season, they ran the ball like crazy. He's now 1 year removed from that ACL, which is a big reason why I didn't like him last year. He's healthy coming into the season. Latavius Murray is gone, who split a lot of his carries. And while they did draft Alexander Mattison to take over Latavius Murray's spot, I don't necessarily think he's going to fill in as admirably as Murray did. This guy is a talented running back that can do it all on what might be one of the most run-heavy teams in all football. I do not see where this goes wrong.
Bro, I'm loving this. I did not expect this fire right here. I thought you were going to come in and be like, well, I just, I needed to take a running back, and I kind of didn't really like mixing. And I took it, but this is awesome. No, I love Dalvin Cook. Like, I loved watching him at Florida State. Like, he was a beast. And what's kind of funny is I don't think he's really injury prone. Like he had the ACL and then he had hamstring injuries last year. But if you go back and look at the history of all the ACL injuries, people always have a hamstring injury when they're coming back from recovery because you're compensating so much for your ACL injury. There's always like a residual hamstring injury after the ACL tear. And so if you go back and look in college, I don't remember him having any major injuries in college. He was always there. He was always a beast. He's lighting it up on the field. And he comes in last year and lit it up for 2 years ago and lit it up for 4 games, then had his unfortunate ACL tear. then had a residual hamstring injury. But like you said, when he came back, he was a beast and had great yards per carry, is great in the passing game, and they obviously want to focus the offense around him. And think about this, okay? Everyone's got a job, right? Um, you don't want to
Not
get
everyone.
fired. You don't want to get okay, in our league. Well, maybe not. I don't know. You don't want to get fired, right? You don't want to get fired from your job. So you're going to do what your bosses want you to do, right? So they had an offensive coordinator who has a history of being a pretty good offensive coordinator, and they fired him with like 5 games left in the season, 4 games left in the season, something like that. They fired him because he was passing the ball too much and they wanted him to run the ball more. So they fire him for passing too much. Here comes the next offensive coordinator. What do you think he's going to do? You think he's going to go pass the ball a lot? No, he's about to run the ball down the
He's
team's
about to
throat.
run.
Yeah, he's about to run. He's literally gonna run the ball, look over at Mike Zimmer, and be like, "Is that good? You want me to keep running more? Well, okay, we'll keep running." He's going to run the ball so much because that dude doesn't want to get fired. Now, I do think they're going to move to a little bit more balanced offense than they were the last 4 games of the season. That was probably what was really going on, was like the new guys like, oh shoot, I better do this running thing or else I'm going to get fired. So they really heavily ran the ball last year. I think it's going to get a little bit more balanced, but he's still going to be great. And so, I think it's funny when people get these ACL tears and these hamstrings and stuff, they automatically get the injury prone label. And I think if you look at the history of Dalvin Cook over his entire time playing football, high school, college, NFL, I don't think he really had that many major injuries. And hamstrings always come after an ACL tear. So, if he can stay healthy, if nothing else happens, um, I think he's going to be great, and I think he's a great asset to your team to go along with Devontae Adams. So, um,
I'm putting my reputation on the line for Dalvin Cook. If this
yeah,
guy
hey,
fails, then you can just call me an idiot, and I'll gladly accept it.
hey, yeah, I think I'm proud of it. Hold on one second. Sorry, I had to text Maddie. No, I'm proud of that, and I'm glad you're so excited for it and fired up for it. That makes me excited for you, and I hope good things come from this season. So, all right, moving on. We're going back to Scott's Tots here with Cameron, number 3 in the second round. Went ahead and took Michael Thomas. Michael Money Thomas got paid this offseason as the highest paid wide receiver currently until they restructure Julio Jones' contract for the 18th time. But yeah, making $20 million a year with a bunch of money, with a boatload of money guaranteed. Had an over an 80% catch percentage last year. Caught like 125 receptions on or something like 125 on like 140 reception or 138 targets or something like that. It was crazy. But people do come after him a little bit and say like his depth of target is not super far. They can be a little. Michael Thomas is usually very consistent. Last year was kind of a little inconsistent. Had some pretty big bust games for Nahum and stuff. But great hands, obviously great at catching the ball, very high percentage of catch rate, is going to get a ton of receptions. This dude had there was some game last year where he had like 16 receptions, and that was 8 points in our league. 16 receptions. It was crazy. And so, really good at running routes, really good at getting open. I don't think he's like a deep threat. He's more of a midfield kind of guy. But he's going to catch the ball. He's going to get you a ton of points on receptions, and has chances to get some pretty good touchdowns and stuff like that and be a top guy. But Cameron did take Hopkins in the first round. So what do you think, one, of Michael Thomas, and what do you think, two, of pairing Michael Thomas with Hopkins and not taking a running back here?
I don't really have a problem with him not taking a running back, just because I don't necessarily believe in forcing a position onto your team just because you need it if they're not anywhere close to being the best person available, which I think was the case here. I'm not a big fan of some of the other running backs that went in this round. I just don't think he picked the right receiver. I like Thomas, but I think I would have much rather gone OBJ here. I think Thomas is a great receiver. He just got paid. The Saints also have been a very, very run heavy team the last couple of years, and I think that's going to limit his opportunities. We saw that sometime, or partly last season, where he would have some games where he dropped deuces and had 2 3 points. So I think he's good, but that's not who my choice would have been for wide receiver.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I probably would have gone like you said with OBJ. I don't think I would have taken Juju over him, but yeah, I definitely probably would have taken OBJ. But hey, he's got two pretty consistent wide receivers. Usually, I know last year, like we said, there was a little bit inconsistent with Michael Thomas, but before that, he was known as a very, very, very consistent wide receiver. So um, we'll have to see how that works out. But now let's get into what some might say is the pick of the draft. The most just out of left field pick here. Um, yeah, let's. Yeah, so we're coming up on Akshay, so it's going to be something wild, something entertaining. He kind of foreshadowed it before the draft. We thought he was joking, but yeah, Akshay here took Derrick Henry with the 4th pick in the 2nd round. Um, what was your level of shock when you saw D. Henry pop up on the screen um, when Akshay was drafting here?
I wasn't shocked, just disappointed.
Yeah, my favorite part of it was like as soon as he made the pick, Brandon just lit up in the chat. Like he just started typing ha 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 all throughout the chat, like laughing all throughout the chat because he knew OBJ fell to him. So yeah, Akshay loves Derrick Henry, loves his new opportunity with the offense and everything, and just decided to take his guy here at number 14 over Joe Mixon, over OBJ, over Juju, over Travis Kelce, over Tyreek Hill, over Mike Evans.
Over literally 30 people in the draft after him.
Yeah, I could probably just literally go down the next like 3 rounds and we hammered Akshay last year for taking Derrick Henry in the 3rd round, and I know he lit it up at the end of the year, which is why people are a little more high on him this year. But yeah, definitely many other people I would have taken over Derrick Henry in this spot. I guess you could honestly go ahead and say the whole draft I probably would have taken over Derrick Henry because you know how much I just don't like him. But yeah, very shocking here, but he said this was his guy, and you know, he's not
Probably could have
not
got him
lying.
in the next round though.
Yeah, he probably could have got him in the 4th round. I don't know, but he changed his name to Derrick Henry Dream, and that's who he wants to carry his team. So, you think they'll continue the high workload and production for Derrick Henry from the end of the year?
No, I mean I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was last year, where he was literally literally got dropped because he was so bad the first
Yeah.
12 weeks. I think he'll be a little bit better, but because he's so bad in the pass game, probably the worst pass catching running back in the league, and because the Titans' offense is a big pile of crap, and I don't really see it getting better.
Yeah.
He's going to be so inconsistent. There are going to be weeks where he drops 1, 2, 3 points, and I just don't think he's worth a 2nd round pick. I think he's going to have a lot of low lows this season, and I don't think it's going to be the funnest ride to own Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and um I don't want to like go in on Akshay and like rip him up or anything because this was his guy. We play this game for fun. For some people is winning. For other people, they want their guys on their team. They feel proud about having him on their team. And he wanted Derrick Henry. He'd been talking about it all weekend. He wanted him. And maybe he thought he wouldn't come back to him in the 3rd round because he knew some other people. There were whispers that maybe they would take a shot on Derrick Henry in the 3rd round, whatever. But yeah, so I don't want to like go in on him, rip him or anything. I know people listening are probably wanting us to do that, but I'm not gonna rip someone for taking the guy they want. That will, make them enjoy this year more or something like that. But yeah, like you said, he doesn't catch the ball. The Titans' offense is terrible. Last year when he had those crazy games, and they were giving him a ton of volume, he wasn't crazy efficient except for that one blow up game. They were going against teams that didn't really care anymore. They didn't have any playoff hopes or anything. Um, so, who knows? I think there probably will be a little bit of regression, but like you said, it's a new offense, new offensive coordinator. Um, Probably going to be crap. Titans are just very slow and boring anyway. Don't really know, but like I can't sit there and put my seal of approval on this pick because, like I said, I think OBJ was probably the pick here. But you got like 30 other names that you could take before Derrick Henry here, but um, he took David Johnson in the first round. If he had paired him with OBJ and then gotten
Ooh,
Derrick Henry in the third
that would
round,
have been.
that would have been pretty good. So, um, but he felt like he needed to take him here, and I'm not going to complain because I think it helped some people drop. But you know, just keep that in mind, Akshay, moving forward. Um, you might have been able to snag him in the third round, considering who was all still on the board. So you could have had OBJ, but hey, you got your guy. Hope it works out for you. Don't think it will, but I hope it does. All right, moving on. We got our we'll probably roast him for that pick going through the year if Derrick Henry doesn't perform. So anyone that's sitting here wanting, some major roast on Akshay, don't worry, it probably will come in the future if Derrick Henry doesn't perform. So, but all right, moving on here. I know we're kind of running out of time. We definitely did not get as far as we wanted in this first part of the draft here. But okay, we got number 15, number 5 in the second round. Brandon's back on the board, and he takes Odell Beckham Jr. I think he didn't expect him to fall to him here, but with the shocking Derrick Henry pick, yeah, we got OBJ. And he got James Conner in the first round. Very nice pairing. OBJ obviously on the Browns now, but much better offense than the Giants. And honestly, I would say Baker is definitely a better quarterback than Eli. So um,
Yeah.
I think it could be really good for Odell as long as he stays healthy and doesn't get too weird about being in Cleveland versus New York and all that stuff. But I think it could be a good pairing with James Conner. What do you think?
I do not know how OBJ fell to Brandon here. I think that should not have happened. I think this was a great pick, a great get by Brandon. There is some risk, anytime a receiver changes teams, there's a little bit of risk there. They have to learn a whole new system and, adjust to the new routes and the new plays. And OBJ has had a long history of injuries, so there is some risk there with OBJ, but he literally has the potential to be the best receiver in fantasy this year. And I could
Yeah.
easily see that if it happened. So I think this was a great pick by Brandon. And I think it's a travesty that he was even able to get OBJ here.
Yeah, shout out to Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so James Conner, OBJ, not a bad start to the draft. All right, moving on to number 6, we've got Nahum back up here. Took Zeke in the first round, and he pairs him with Juju Smith-Schuster. I know there's questions about Juju and the Steelers' offense without AB and Lev Bell, but he decided to take him here. Finished with great stats last year, like 1,400 yards and some other touchdowns. Found out the other day that he had 5 more opportunities to get a touchdown, but he got tackled at the 2-yard line. So he could have had 5 more touchdowns, which would have been crazy. He's going to get peppered with targets. But what do you think about him not having Antonio Brown to take some of the coverage away? Do you think that'll affect him? Do you expect regression? What do you think here?
I don't. I have full confidence in Juju. I think he's like an elite receiver. In the games last year where Antonio Brown was out, he was great. Although it was a small sample size, but I think he can handle it. I think at the very worst, he's going to get a ton of volume in a very pass-friendly offense. So I think even if he struggles a little bit in terms of getting double teamed or getting double coverage, and if he struggles a little bit in the efficiency side, I think because he's going to get so much volume from Big Ben, he's going to get a lot of red zone looks. I think he'll be fine here. And I could see, again, like OBJ, I could see a scenario where he finishes as the number 1 receiver. So I really, really like this pick for Nate.
Yeah, and he's a really good wide receiver. He was really good in college. He's just very, very good. And so being the number 1 guy on the Steelers, probably going to work out just fine. So, all right, moving on to number 7 here. We're back at Aaron, or number 17, sorry. We're back at Aaron. And Rugga Tug Chubb took Travis Kelce. So the first tight end goes here, number 17. in the second round. Decides to pass on another running back, decides to pass on one of the top tier wide receivers left, like Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, but goes with Travis Kelce, which I think gives him a pretty big positional advantage over everyone at tight end. Would you have taken a tight end here or kept waiting on that position?
No, I think where Aaron got him, I think I would have pulled the trigger as well. I think this was a really good pick. I think Kelsey is so much better than every other tight end that advantage that you get for having Kelsey in your spot is really worth a second round pick. Add on to the fact that the numbers he puts up are pretty comparable to like the wide receivers that are going around him. So I actually really like this pick, and I have no problem with him taking a tight end here over like a running back or a receiver.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, moving on. Number 18, number 8 in the second round. We get back to myself here with my nips, and I was kind of torn here. We'll get to my pick in the third round, and I'll kind of reference back to this. But I was definitely thinking about taking a certain player. I wasn't sure if I could wait on him or not. Um, and so I was like, well, I took a running back in the first round, and so I think I need to grab one of these top receivers before they go. And so I was kind of looking at Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. Um, I decided that, you know, with Oakland and question marks and the helmet thing, I just decided I'd rather not deal with Antonio Brown. So I pushed him out of the way, and I was looking at Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans, and I kind of said to myself, okay, Mike Evans is pretty consistent, but doesn't ever really have like those big boom weeks. And who knows with the new Bruce Arian offense? Is it going to take like a year to get warmed up to it? What's going to happen here? So I decided, I kind of went with a different mentality in the draft this year. I wanted to go for the guys that can give you just, amazing weeks and take a little bit more risky moves and stuff like that. And so I decided to pull the trigger on Tyreek Hill here. I know he's having a bunch of off the field stuff that I obviously do not approve of. And,
No, I
you
approve.
know, I hope
No, I'm just kidding.
that I really hope that his child is safe and is not in harm. And who knows if the NFL is going to come back, if the case is going to get reopened and he's going to have to deal with suspension. But I decided that for now I want to, go with Tyreek Hill and take the chance on that number one offense in the league, Patrick Mahomes, the spread offense, fastest guy in the football league. And just take someone that has a chance to just light up the week and pair well with Alvin Kamara, who also has a chance to light up the week and just go off. So decided to pull the trigger on him. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great pick as long as he doesn't get arrested. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the number one receiver in fantasy. Last year. I don't see him having any issues coming close to that as long as he can avoid the law enforcement issues. So that's really all it comes down to. I feel like with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. So just felt like I needed to take a wide receiver there. All right. Next up, number 19. We're back at Rahi. And took Christian McCaffrey in the first round. He decides to pair him with Joe Mixon. I know he's had some offensive line worries, but Joe Mixon himself is a great player, great pass catcher, great runner, and has a new offensive system coming in. It's supposed to be more spread and, more points and more plays and all that kind of stuff. I will say that from what I've seen in preseason, every time Joe Mixon has a really amazing run, it's called back on a holding call. And when they don't hold, he gets stuffed behind the line of scrimmage or only gets like 2 or 3 yards. So it's almost like the only reason he's getting those really long runs is when they hold the guys out of his way. Um, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with this offensive line here in the new system. But I think he's a good enough running back to where at this point in the draft, number 19, I think you take him ahead of people like Aaron Jones and Devonta Freeman and Kerryon Johnson. So he's got he's got Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon. You think that's a stable running back core?
I do. I do think that's a very stable running back core. I like Mixon. I think there are some serious concerns there, but keep in mind also he performed pretty well last year when Jeff Driscoll came in for Andy Dalton. So, and their offensive line wasn't that great last year either. So, yeah, I think it's a good pick here.
Cool. All right.
And I'm gotta switch my mic again. Sorry, just keep going on. Not the most prepared tonight, but we'll
All
keep on
right.
going.
Moving into the last pick of the second round, number 20 overall. We get back to Taylor here. Took Saquon number 1 overall. Um, you know, if you go back to last season, Taylor did not have the greatest time. Obviously, was winless for the longest time and dealt with a lot of crap. But he held it together, and the two people that helped him hold it together, Saquon took him number 1 overall, and George Kittle was his other shining light of the season, and he decided to pull the trigger on him, number 20, number 10 in the second round. Bow down to Saquon, took George Kittle, took his other guy, and bringing him back for this season. He's got Saquon and George Kittle. And then, well, I guess we'll get to that in a second. But you think it was okay to grab Kittle here, get his guy?
Yeah, and how am I sounding, Danny?
You sound all right.
All right, yeah, I'll charge my AirPods and use this for the time being. This move by Taylor here to get Kittle. I'm really high on Kittle as well this year. I think my strategy for tight end was if Kelsey or Kittle fell to me, I would take them, and if not, I would wait a couple of rounds. But I mean, I think Kittle. He broke the receiving record by tight end last year. Freakish talent. He's the only stable option in that receiving core for San Francisco right now. There's a lot of potential in that San Francisco wideout core, but there's no one that's really stepped up and really emerged as a clear target. And every single practice that the 49ers have, the same beat writers report that Kittle's the main guy there. So, yeah, I think this was a great pick. I think Taylor locked up his tight end position.
Yeah, I would agree. So he got his guys. He's happy about it. And yeah, so Cosmo, let me ask you this. We're kind of getting on to the time where we, our max time limit here on the podcast. Do we want to call it here? I know we only got through 2 rounds, but when we come back for part 2, we could hit rounds 3 and 4, and then we can kind of go quicker through, the rest of them and hit the highlights and stuff like that and get, still give some good deep analysis and everything, but maybe not go as in depth. What do you want to do here?
Yeah, I think we can call it. Yeah, I guess next time we can just move fast and try and hit just kind of the key picks that we saw for each round, maybe run through each round and then just talk about one or two picks from each round that stood out to us.
Right. All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and end it here at the end of round 2, and we'll hit you guys up next week with round 3, and then as far as we can get. Stay on the edge of your seats. Be waiting because it's going to be crazy when we get into rounds 3 and beyond of the 2019 Sausage Bowl Draft. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. Oh, go ahead, Cosmo.
The next podcast, we also will give our preseason predictions. So me and Danny will both pick who we think is going to win this year based off the draft. And I already have the person in mind who I think had a great draft. And then we're also going to pick is going to come in last. And so keep on the record for that.
Yeah. We're going to,
should be good.
Next episode, unless there's any crazy news or anything, we're probably just going to jump right into it and start with round 3 and hit as much stuff as we can. And then, like Cosmo said, we're going to hit our bold predictions for the season at the end, predicting who we think is going to get to the championship and who's going to win, and then who we think is going to end up in last this year in the Sausage Bowl League. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be juicy. Stay on the edge of your seat. Don't move. Don't even go to the bathroom. Don't go to work. I don't care. You got to sit there and wait for the next podcast to come out. Am I right, Cosmo? Give me some skin.
Go to your jobs. Go to your jobs. Don't listen to Danny.
Yeah, all right. Well, anyway, so thank you for tuning in. We're excited to be hitting you with season 2. Like I said, we're going to try to bring bigger stuff here. Obviously, we weren't as prepared for tonight. Kind of snuck up on us. Whatever I just tried to say there. But we want to improve the podcast as much as we can this year. So stay tuned. Stay hyped and hit us up next week for the continuation of the draft analysis and our bold predictions for the season. So thanks for listening and good night, suckers.